Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Deborah Jenkins, and I'm happy. Sorry, and I'm happy to. And I'm happy to represent the International Council on Archives here today. One thing that you're bound to know, or you'll find out soon, is, the archives world is a small and very well integrated world. And so when in London, which is where I used to work, we were told in 2008 that we would be hosting the Olympic Games of 2012. The first reaction for an archivist is to think, who else in the profession has already done that? And for us in London, it was completely natural, completely normal to turn to Barcelona and to say, how did you cope? How did you archive the records of the 92 games? And the reaction from the colleagues in Barcelona was to say, come and have a look. And so in 2008, we turned up from London. I think there were quite a few of us. And the person who received us is Fina. And so it's with a lot of pleasure that I'm here today to introduce Fina, who probably doesn't need much of an introduction, but it's with a lot of pleasure that I'm here to do that. So she's an archivist, she's a historian, and she also holds a master's degree in business management from the School of Industrial Engineering of Barcelona. She holds a master's degree in document management, transparency and access to information from the Autonomous University of Barcelona, and a postgraduate degree in electronic document management from UAB, and training in ISO 30300 and 30301 document management system internal audits, also from UAB. She's been, as I've just mentioned, the Barcelona 92 Olympic Games archivist, the Barcelona City Council archivist, the archivist and document manager for the Barcelona provincial government, and is currently the archivist document manager for the Barcelona Maritime Museum. She's been a member of the National Council of Archives, the National Commission for Access, Evaluation and Selection of Documentation, the Association of Archivists Document Managers of Catalonia, the International Consultative Council of the Project for the Recovery of the Historical Archives of the National Police of Guatemala, and Vice President of Archivists Without Borders. She has many hats. She has carried out numerous archival processing and prospecting projects, among which we can highlight those of the Catalan associations in Buenos Aires, Montevideo, and Rosario. She has also directed the organization of the Vic Athletic Club Collection and has been a tutor for several master degree projects at the Higher School of Archiving and Document Management linked to sports archives. She's taken part in specialist conferences and has published in different media, mainly in connection with two lines of research. Firstly, sports archives, and secondly, document management in the context of the electronic administration. If you're interested in the details of some of her publications, particularly the sporting publications, I'll refer you to the sports notes. So, Fina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Deborah.
Yes, Deborah. Well, I'm going to give you an overview of what is the International Council on Archives, because some of you may not know what it is, and what is the section on sports archives, and also I'll give you a little taste of different projects around the world about organizing collections in the sports. Well, we're not going to assess them. I'm just going to give you some information about them. I'm not going to tell you about everything, just a sample of different countries, so that you see that we are working on it everywhere, but we like some guidance, perhaps. The ICA, the CIA in Spanish, it's a non-governmental organization financed by its own members. You have to think that there are 199 countries represented in this council, and it was created in 1948 on the 9th of June under the auspices of the UNESCO. So it has existed for 70 years. It's a cultural association that was created just after the Second World War. And curiously enough, the 9th of June is the International Day of Archives. So it is the day when all archives in the world open their doors. So which are the objectives of this International Council of Archives? It promotes the good archive management as a basis for the protection of rights of the citizens and states, the good governance for research, etc. And we are referring to text documents, photographs, graphic documents. So we're talking about letters, about photographs, about agreements, about videotapes, etc. So everything, like maps, etc., a bit of everything. So therefore, this is the International Association, the International Council, that gives us some guidance to work under the auspices of culture and beyond. It also contributes and participates in modulating the efficacy and efficiency of document management. And now we are getting into electronic management of documents, etc. So this International Council of Archives, it works from the creation of the document to its placing in historical archives, regardless of the type of document. Another objective of the International Council of an Archive is international cooperation. So this is an example of it, where different countries, different professionals, different ways of working. I mean, we're going to work together and share our experiences, so that there's some cooperation. This ICA respects diversity, language diversity and cultural diversity of each society. Even if the official languages of the Council are French and English, almost all documents are translated into many languages. I think there are some documents that are translated into 30 languages. And another objective is to create opportunities to connect professionals by interchanging information, organization of seminars, congresses, etc. Which is an example. Today is an example of that. And another important feature is the elaboration of good practices and standards. It creates and works on good practices and standards. One is like the management of metadata, how to access, laws about access to documents so that we can access them, and also the management of digital documents, etc. And also, I don't know if you can see it, but we have an example of the archive language. If we have a doubt about the meaning of access, because access has different meanings, so here we have it in different meanings, and if we need more languages, we just add them. So this is about the respect of language diversity. It's also a source of information for society. In 2011, the International Council on Archives, and it was the Universal Declaration on Archives, promoted by the International Council on Archives and adopted by the UNESCO. So right now there are over 4,150 organisms and citizens from around the world that have given support to this DUA, Universal Declaration of Archive. But this Universal Declaration, what does it imply? It promotes the preservation of documents. It promotes for governments to intervene when there are problems such as wars, etc. It promotes the good preservation, the good dissemination, and something which is also very important, it promotes access to information. So the International Council on Archives has different branches, sections, and expert groups. The branch of the European branch, where Deborah is the president, or Vita. In 1968, it was created in 1968, which was created in Sarbica, which is for the Asian subcontinent, because they were like a bit lost. So if they got together, they had some support. This is what we were mentioning before about cooperation and, well, joining efforts, which is also always beneficial for everyone. So how many regional branches are there? I'm telling you about the regional branches so that you see how important it is to join territorially when there are problems. For instance, we have 13 branches. The ALA from Latin America, the Pacific region, Senarbica, Central Africa, Eastica, East Asia, Sarbica, South and East of Asia, Sarbica, East and Southeast Africa, Uarbica, African West Africa, Eurasica, which is Eurasia, Elbica, which is the European one, which reaches Israel, in fact, Arbica, which is the Arabian one, Nanmica, which is the North American, Parbica is the Caribbean region, and the Sarbica, which is Southeast Asia. So as you can see, several areas, several regions in the world have joined together in order to cooperate, to work, and to move forward in the world of archives, recovery, access to information and documents, etc. So in 1976, the first two sections that also mentioned when there were branches, sections, etc., in order to SPA and the other, and there are two active or working sections, which are education, literary archives, religious traditions, local world, whose presidents are here, notary public archives, architectural archives, which has always been a very important section, the one of architecture, company archives, parliamentary and political parties archives, university archives, and archives on sports archives, which is the one that we are dealing with today. So, what is the archive section on sport of the International Council on Archives? So, it was created in 2040 in Vienna, which is one of the latest, and which are its objectives. So, the preservation and safeguard of archives in the world of sports. This is like the basis. If we don't preserve the documents, we won't be able to access them. Then we'll see some cases with our colleagues of, well, the problems they found to locate some, documents. And this Flash magazine, well, there's an article that explaining what is this section about. What else? What other objectives do we have? So, making governments and citizens aware of the need to preserve archives from everyone. We are not only talking about clubs, federations, etc. We're talking about much more than that. It's like the personal archives or personal collections of sports people, of personal collections of companies linked to the sports world, of companies that maybe build sports facilities. So we need to preserve all this memory in order to then access it and to make research, and even for medicine, because it's very important for medicine. It's very important medicine for the world of sport. So all the information we can create by the development of medicine on sports medicine, it's very important for us to be able to have it and to do some research on it. Another objective of this International Archive on Sports is the organization of seminars, workshops, roundtables, such as we are having today, in order to explain experiences, to discuss different visions of professionals linked to sport, and sharing information beyond the world of archivists. For instance, the International Council of Archives has met in Abu Dhabi, invited by the governments. Here we have been invited by the Girona's government, or in Ordino, invited by the government of Andorra. We've been to Finland, and this is one of the small format seminar explaining what is our job and role. Another objective of the International Council on Archives and the sports section is the dissemination of information. I mean, these objectives that we want to fulfill will never get there. So that's why we are publishing, we are disseminating, and we want to create different leaflets in several languages, in Arabic, Russian, French, English, Chinese, in order to be able to inform. And also we also have the webpage in order to give information about our interest, about our objectives, where do we want to get to. And we also edited a monograph on sports archives in the COMA magazine with experiences from different countries. These are basically European countries, because the Northern Europe has a longest tradition about the preservation of archives, and this is we really notice the difference, because there are examples in Northern Europe, many examples, whereas in the south of Europe, I mean, we are not so much advanced in this respect. Also in Latin America, we don't have much. I mean, they are much aware of this importance. So there's like a certain difference between Northern Europe and other countries in the world. So here, for instance, in this monograph, we'll see that experiences usually come from Finland, France, England, etc., even though there are some from Barcelona, for instance. So another objective is the first seminar, which is related to cooperation, as we have said. So which have been like the international initiatives have we found? So when I say we have found, I mean, this is just a sample. There are many. I'm not going to give any, I mean, I don't have to agree with everything that with the systems I'm going to show to you, but I'm going to give you some examples without judging them, from different organizations of information linked to the world of sport, and from different countries. Besides, if you add up all these small initiatives, you'll see that there are many of them, and you can take good things from all of them, so that we perhaps lack some common guidelines to do that. And, well, we have a lot to say about that, in fact. So, the first one, International Archive, is the organization of this seminar. It's the first international seminar which aims to be celebrated every 2 years, with the idea of making all stakeholders aware, all stakeholders in the sports world. Another initiative is the directory we are developing. We are working on an international directory where we are incorporating all organizations, entities that have documents related to sports, that is accessible, and that more and more will be increased, with the idea of incorporating it in our web page from the ICA, and we hope to be able to incorporate it next year. And we hope there will be enough information, or quite a lot of information. Here you can see the items we ask for. So from name of archive, meters, whether it is accessible or not, the web page, the location, etc., in order to have like a kind of map and to know where there is information about sports around the world. And I also, if you have experiences or if you know information about entities that have such documents on sport, so if you want to tell us, that will be good, and so we'll have more information. Another international initiative is the Archive on the World of Labor. So for many years, a member of the archives of the labor that was linked to the sports archive, the work it has is very interesting because it has some active capture, so to speak. So when they see that there's a collection that is important, they go and look for it. So this is like an active behavior. And in 2018, it's the year of world sports, and from all this collection they have a sample each month of some kind of demonstration of a document. And these are some of the collections linked to the sports world that they have. I mean, there are many others, but these are the most important. And basically in France, as you know, the archive system is very well marked. So it's the archive of labor archive, and it is where they have a section for sports documents in there. And the importance of disseminating these documents, they do not only capture them, but it's very interesting because there's a collection from the French Olympic Academy, of the Referees Association of Referees Association, sport journalists, the committee of Pierre de Coubertin, and there are also private holdings of players, of athletes, also the French Federation from advertising. And there's a lot of trade unions from sports. I mean, companies linked to sports and trade unions. And I would like to get into this, but to access it so that you can see.
All right. Here, this is the website. I'm afraid I can't see it on my screen. Maybe I'll just need my glasses. This is the website, and it includes a lot of information. This is something you can look into afterwards because it's on the website of the Provincial Council. And if you go in here, you can see all the archives available, and every archive has its own explanation, and it states who did the donation, what type of documentation is included. The French are very strict in this. Another initiative, the London Metropolitan Archives. This is an important initiative, particularly because before 2012, when the Olympic Games were organized, they had the sports sitting project, a very interesting project. They took all these cities that had been Olympic cities, they analyzed all the documentation to see where all the information was available. Until that moment, it was at the website of the London Metropolitan Archives. But the other day, when I spoke to them, they said that it would be on the archives website that I'll be telling you about afterwards. That collects previous websites and tweets. And it's a very interesting project that one should bear in mind. That's another important initiative. Another very important initiative in Finland, where they have active collection policies for sports archives, because this is a national repository of all the documentation regarding the world of sport. It's not so usual to have a single repository for all the documentation of one type of activity. We're not talking about state information, government information that they have on the municipality archives. We're talking about private archives. So they have these active collection activities, and as they have all these archives in the museum, they also look at the history of the sports clubs. And if a sport club, for example, wants to create the 50th anniversary book, then the museum offers them this possibility, because the museum has a department. The archive department of the museum is formed by archivists and historians that help in this type of project. There is another initiative that's very important. That's of the Italian Sports Archive Center. We have experiences from France, England, Finland, but this is a country from the south of Europe, Italy, and this is linked to the world of religion and of the church, because they have different small associations that are linked to each territory. It was created in 1943 after the Second World War. Well, no, after that, during the Second World War, and it promoted this need for sport, the values of sport, to move Italy ahead. The project was presented in May 2018. It has already been completed, and they reorganized all the territories. There was a census of all the archives available in the territory, and they organize all these resources. It's a very important initiative, and the Centro Sportivo Italiano is one of the main sports centers in Italy, if not the most important one. And of all these documents, they prepared an exhibition. After organizing all the documents, they held an exhibition that was Nati per Correre. You all know it, don't you? And this means that there are many different initiatives that derive from this first initiative. Now, let me show you another one. It's not an archive initiative. This is a website. That's the Web Archive in the UK. And its goal is to provide is to safeguard information from all the websites, and there's a specific section for the world of sports, because in England there are always a few steps ahead. We already have websites that collect websites or that gather information from expired websites. But this is a specific section of websites from the world of sports, so it's really worth paying attention to. And what they do, even, you can't see it here, I think. But anyway, you can look into it later on. but they also have, for example, all tweets from Twitter, from the university, and as they safeguard all this information that is not on hard copy, it's not on paper, it's information from Facebook, from Twitter, but that is information that may have been lost, but you can continue accessing it. So it's not lost in the end. Now, let me show you an international initiative of a federation. This is the Athlete International Federation in Monaco. And the archivist working there is also a member of the ICA, and it's the same for the Finland initiative I mentioned, and the London Metropolitan Archives used to be also member of the sports section. And here, this Athleticism International Federation realized a few years ago how important it was for them to organize all the documentation they had been producing from their beginnings, because very often in these cases we see that there is an individual initiative. If the managers are aware of this need, because very often what happens is that safeguarding information should be an obligation. It shouldn't be a subjective option. So if the management of an entity is aware of the need of preserving information, they will preserve. But if the management of an entity is not aware of this need, they won't preserve that information. But in this case, the International Athleticism Federation, they realize how important it would be for them to organize all this information, and they have even created an IAF heritage department, and all this started in January 2018. We don't have any outcomes yet from this department, but at least a few years ago they realized how important it would be for them to preserve this information. And then we have the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, and they have this very important program, the assets program, because they did some research, they conducted a study, and they issued a report that stated that 50% of the video clips wouldn't be able to be reproduced shortly, and many photographs were also in a bad condition. So they conducted a study on the heritage of the IOC, and based on this report, based on this study, they looked for some funding, and they created this patrimonial assets management project, and they have digitalized over 33,000 hours of video, 8,500 hours of audio recordings, 2,000 documents, archives, and 20,000 objects. But firstly, they had to organize everything. You cannot digitalize everything at once. You first need to organize everything, and then you digitalize it. And one of the things that really draws my attention after having done this research is that there are many international projects and initiatives, but they're not well known. It's either you only know them because you know someone who's involved in the project. Here we have a member of the Sports Archive section, but it's difficult to find this information on the website, for instance. So all these interesting things are done, but they are not advertised properly so that everybody knows about them. And of course, you can access all this information. And there is another initiative of the IOC is to offer a sports guideline to manage sports archives. We're not talking about Olympic archives, but sports archives from clubs. Here we see the link. This is an initiative that helps standardize how the research should be done, how the records should be organized. These are the links, but they are not working for me right now. In any case, there is this practical guide in Spanish, English, French. I think those are the 3 languages you will find this practical guide in. And it's very interesting because it gives you these guidelines. It's very interesting. And these are guidelines given by archivists. Another international initiative, that's the Brazilian Football Federation. They have many documents on paper, electronic documents, audiovisual files, and they have applied the ISO 14721, and they expect to digitalize at a national level because the federation is made up of various entities, and they want to interconnect all information and to preserve, of course, all this information properly. I find this initiative interesting because it's something new. We don't have any outcomes yet, but it's worth looking into. And the digitalized documents are saved in this in this worldwide archive. And then we have this initiative in Uruguay. This is a project of the University de la República, la Universidad de la República in Uruguay. The idea is also to safeguard all their records because there is a lot of information, and the idea is also to organize and to preserve and disseminate the cultural heritage and the documental heritage. And they became aware once again here of the need of preserving this information, and then they started to work on this archive. And now let me show you this manifest of the European Council for Sports, of the CSH and the ICA-SPO, and there's a petition that was made to the EU to promote and to raise awareness within the EU for the safeguarding of these sports archives. So there is this specific safeguarding of sports archives. Here you see the petition and the number of the petition for, as I said, the safeguarding of sports archives. And at the ICA and SPO, we have been working hard on this, and the CSH. And maybe we're going to change our strategy in the future, because maybe it would be better to go to the Council of Europe, because they work more on topics related to heritage. Now, let me talk about this other archive by the Manchester City National Football Museum. And in this case, they have also been recovering their records and their museum records, and we are interested also in having verbal records, and they wanted to have all women involved in football since 1945, after the Second World War, until the present. All the women who have been involved in female football, so that they explain their experience. And the project is called Unblocking the Hidden History of Female Football, because, as you all know, male football is very visible, whereas female football is absolutely invisible. And the idea is to unblock the hidden history of female football. And it has been very, very successful. The project was completed last Sunday, so everybody who had been involved in the world of female football could come and give their verbal record. And they've been able to gather many objects thanks to this project. One, for example, could bring in their medals. And here also it's interesting because they're focusing on the topic of gender in the world of sport. The next initiative can lead towards many archive projects, because it's not an archive project per se. There is this initiative in Egypt, where there is a group of people, there are groups of people on Facebook and Twitter, where they are searching for Olympic athletes who are still alive and who are over 80 years old. For example, they have met an athlete who's 103 years old. So in this way you have a list of all Olympic athletes that are still alive. And then they also inform you whether some of them have passed away or not. Or the other day, for example, they were informing about a new former athlete who they found and who's still alive. So this is a list of athletes, Olympic athletes, and they have their own personal records. So in this way we can have many archive projects. So we're talking about athletes who are 80 plus, and many of them can be donating their own records, their own documents to a public archive. That's why it's so important to have this list, this registry. And you have all the information of the athlete, the Olympic Games they participated in, their sport, and so on and so forth. There are other international initiatives that have to do with heritage, and at the end of October we'll have the Sport, Heritage and Patrimonial Dynamics in Bordeaux. And the idea of sports dynamics to recover their heritage, and additionally in this case we'll have Kim, the Vice President, participating. We also have the Argentinian National Archive. That's another initiative that provides technical consultation and assessment to clubs. For example, if they're doing a technical assessment of a club, in this way they have all the information properly organized, and they prevent any information from getting lost. Here in Barcelona we also have el Centre d'Estudis Olímpics de l'Esport, which is the Olympic Studies Center that have been developing their own initiatives. We also have this other project, that's the Catalan Archives. It all started with guideline and organization guide. Here you have the link that explains which were the steps that were taken to organize the different records and how this led to the current project of Femartius, Femasport. That's Let's Do Sport, Let's Do Archives. And what we have is, well, a new action, because we have been able to raise awareness about the importance of preserving archives, preserving records from different sports such as sailing. That means that now, instead of having active collection actions, we have different projects like this one that was started in 2011, and right now we have more and more archives that have been linked through this project of sports clubs. We also have the archive of the Castilla-León Football Federation in Spain. However, the project is not in the network yet, and I haven't been able to talk to them yet. As I said before, it's a pity when you have projects carried out but not advertised, not publicized. We also have the Football Uruguay Association. That was also linked to the ICA and SPO at the beginning. They asked us what they could do to organize all the documents they had of the first Football World Cup in 1930, and it is linked also to the Spanish Archives project. As you can see, therefore, we have mentioned 21 initiatives, but there are hundreds of them, various initiatives. But it would be important also to find a common line. You have seen here a list of very different initiatives, but it's always with the same goal, that is to preserve the information linked to the world of sports, with many different professional roles involved in the organization of the information that produce documents: referees, trainers, documentalists, reporters, librarians, politicians, archivists. All these people are creating, are producing, or are linked to the archives of the world of sports. And there are many, many businesses, many clubs, associations, sports federations that are generating, producing documents. There are many athletes also that produce documents, and we have a big gap here. We're talking about photographs, contracts, minutes, leaflets, all types of reports, documentaries. All this information, all this documentation that is produced by these individuals and these entities shouldn't be lost. We are talking about a lot of knowledge here. And at the ICASPO, we are very aware of this, and that's why we have been promoting and supporting the creation of this meeting, of this seminar, because we believe it can have a great impact in the organization of new archives. And that's all. Thank you very much.